LiberalViewer presents.
So I'm not a big fan of tasers, especially because police officers seem so often to end up misusing them, but there's also a certain segment of the citizenry that seems to love tasers, as ironically personified by comedian Stephen Colbert in his satirical take on a recent taser incident that began with this clip.
I love tasers. It's all the fun of watching someone get electrocuted without having to go to Texas. So it's time again to give a shout out to my ohmies. This is current events.
Don't tase me, bro.
And now that great current events intro preceded Stephen Colbert's coverage of a taser incident in my local area that I earlier saw covered on my local ABC News affiliate in this clip.
Local law enforcement faces new criticism over the use of tasers. The Sacramento chapter of the ACLU is questioning why sheriff's deputies used a taser on a shopper. Now, this all happened outside of a drugstore in Rancho Cordova earlier this week, and what happened there is disputed, but everyone agrees deputies tackled a shopper and hit her with the taser. That's the woman right there. And then discovered that, well, she wasn't actually the shoplifter they were looking for.
Now, you'd think this case of mistaken identity would lead to maybe an apology, but police weren't apologizing, even though you can see Stephen Colbert ridiculing their escalation of the incident in this clip.
Instead of the actual criminal, police tasered Andrea Borman, who was innocent. Or was she?
When she walked out of the store, officers stopped her. She tried to show the receipt for the candy she bought. As time went on, things escalated.
You know how things can escalate. Hitler was an art student in Vienna. As time went on, things escalated.
Now, while I'm not condoning the Hitler reference, I do think escalation is the real issue when it comes to tasers, because tasers can be lethal and therefore should only be used in situations that justify the use of lethal force, as you can see my local ABC News affiliate quoting me saying in this clip.
The ACLU says this is another example of why tasers should not be used unless there is, quote, imminent threat of serious physical harm.
Tasers can be lethal, that they cause excruciating pain, can cause severe injury and death, and that officers need to be trained, and the use of tasers needs to be heavily regulated.
Hey, who was that guy, and why was he being interviewed in a wind tunnel? But seriously, what I said there was right, because tasers can be lethal, so they should only be used against the same serious threats that justify the use of guns or other lethal weapons, for reasons you can see described in detail at tinyurl.com/taserinfo, but that didn't stop Stephen Colbert from trying to justify the behavior the innocent victim described like this.
I was knocked to the ground, I was in a chokehold, and then while I was laying on the ground, I was tased.
They were being considerate. They tased you on the ground because they didn't want you to fall. And to those who still think Ms. Borman seems innocent, keep in mind she was in CVS to get some candy for a movie. You can't bring your own candy into a movie. That's against the law.
And even though Stephen Colbert did not actually mention the ACLU during his program, after the show he did end up tweeting, quote, "If that woman the cops tasered at CVS was really innocent, why did they find taser marks on her? Check and mate, ACLU," unquote. And that joke justification would just be funny if the news story from my local ABC affiliate hadn't ended with this actual justification.
The Sacramento County Sheriff's Department says most taser deaths involve people who suffered from pre-existing conditions, and they still say the force they used that night was not excessive.
So tasering an innocent woman pinned on the ground is not excessive, and any taser deaths or injuries are the fault of some weakness on the part of the victims? That doesn't seem right to me, but I want to know what you think. Is it excessive force to use a taser on a person who does not pose an imminent threat of doing someone serious physical harm? And on the juxtaposition of Colbert and the cops, should police be worried to find themselves arguing on the same side as satirical conservative pundit Stephen Colbert?
YouTube, you decide.